Hi everyone, so today we're going to be looking at equivalent fractions. We're going to be looking at what equivalent fractions are and how to find them. Okay, so we're going to start off with a problem to explore. So we have, if John has 1/4 of a chocolate bar and Mary has 2/8 of a chocolate bar, who has more of a chocolate bar? And here I have represented a diagram of John's chocolate bar and a diagram of Mary's chocolate bar. And as you can see, they are of equal value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you all pause the video and try and solve this problem on your own using the diagrams. And then once you are finished, go ahead and restart the video again, and I will go ahead and we'll do the problem step by step together and see if we can find what an equivalent fraction is and how to find one. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so now that you've come back, the first thing we should do when we have a problem is underline the important parts of the problem. So let's start there. So John has 1/4 of a chocolate bar. This is important because it tells us how much of the chocolate bar, of John's chocolate bar, he has. Okay, and we're going to circle 1/4 because that's going to be an important number for us, because it tells us how much of the chocolate bar he actually has. So we're going to also underline Mary, who has 2/8 of a chocolate bar, because this tells us how much of the chocolate bar we will need to represent for Mary. We're also going to underline the question, because we need to know what is being asked of us. So we're trying to find who has more, and we're going to circle that word because that's important, more of a chocolate bar. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to look at John's chocolate bar. The problem tells us that John has 1/4 of a chocolate bar. So how are we going to represent 1/4 from this whole piece? What should we do first? Well, we should divide the piece into 4 pieces, 4 equal pieces. And why do we divide into 4 equal pieces? Well, we have the denominator here of 1/4, and the denominator tells us how many pieces the whole is going to have. So in John's problem, in John's part of the question, tells us there are 4 parts of the whole. So we're going to divide his whole into 4 parts. Okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And we know that for 4 parts, so 4 over 4 equals 1 whole, which is still represented here. We just split the whole into 4 equal parts. Okay? So the problem tells us that John has 1/4 of a chocolate bar. So how many of these fourths are we going to take away? Well, we're going to take away 1/4. Well, maybe. We're going to take away 1/4. And we take away 1/4 because the problem tells us that John only has 1/4 of the chocolate bar. So out of that whole, he only has this amount, 1/4. Okay, so the next part of the problem. Mary has 2/8 of a chocolate bar. So, thinking back on what we did with John's chocolate bar, how many pieces are we going to split Mary's chocolate bar into? 1/8. We're going to split it into 8 equal pieces. Why are we going to split it into 8 equal pieces? Well, Mary's denominator right here, the 8, is in the denominator, which tells us that there are 8 equal parts in the whole. So in her whole chocolate bar, there are 8 equal parts. So we're going to divide her chocolate bar into 8 equal parts. See? Okay. So once we have 8 equal parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we see that Mary only has 2 of these 8 pieces. So she has 1 and then another one. Okay, she has 2 of the 8 pieces. So this is the amount that Mary has of chocolate. So the question asks, who has more of a chocolate bar? Well, when comparing John's chocolate bar, okay, when comparing John's chocolate bar to Mary's chocolate bar, we'll put them next to each other. There we go. We can see that they have the same amount. So no one has more. They have the same amount. And this would represent an equivalent fraction. So we know that 1/4 is equivalent, so is equal to, equivalent means equal to, 2/8. So they have the same amount. And we know that they have the same amount because their value is the same. They have the same value. They have the same amount, as we can see here. They may be two different fractions, but they have the same value. Okay? So, we are going to do another problem here. We are going to go to the next screen. And we're going to do the problem of 2/14 is equal to 1/7. So this is saying that 2/14 is equivalent to 1/7. Now let's look at the diagram that they have represented for us. So we have 14 pieces here in this hole. So this is representing 14 out of 14. Okay? And this 2 shaded here tells us 2 of the 14 pieces is shaded. So this is the same as saying there are 2 parts of the 14 pieces of the whole. Okay? So this is telling us that there's 1/7. So this is representing 1/7. Now how do we know this? Because 7 is how many parts of the whole there are. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And only one of the parts is shaded. So one part out of the 7 parts of the whole is shaded. Now we can see that 2/14 and 1/7 are the same value. Now how do we know that? Because when compared, when put up next to each other, they have the same value. They have the same worth. They have the same amount that is shaded. Okay? So, what if we didn't have these diagrams to go off of? Well, if we just saw 2/14 and we didn't know that it was equivalent to 1/7, what could we do? So say we have 2/14. Okay? We have 2/14. So what we do is we find the common factor between 2 and 14. Now, the factors of 2 are 1. Okay. Okay. I don't really know what that was. Let's get that eraser. Alright. Let's just erase that real quick. Alright. So the factors of 2 are 1 and 2, right? And the factors of 14, what are the factors? The factors of 14 are 1, 2, 7, and that's it. So, what number is the same here between the two factors? Well, obviously 1, but we're going to take that out because we know if we multiply or divide anything by 1, we're just going to get itself. So we're going to look at 2. 2. So they both have 2 in common. So what we're going to do is we see that 2 is a common factor, so we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2. And when we divide the numerator and denominator by 2, we are essentially dividing by 1, because what do we know? A number over another number is the same as 1 whole. So we're essentially dividing by 1, which we're able to do. And we're dividing the top by 2 and the bottom by 2 because it has the same common factor, as well as whatever we do to the numerator, we need to do the denominator. So when we do this, 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. Okay? And so we can see that 1/7 is equivalent to 2/14, or that 1/7 has the same value as 2/14. Now, we are going to say, what if we started with 1/7? Okay? What if we started with 1/7? Okay? And we didn't know that 2/14 was equivalent. What could we do? Well, let's explore it. So let's erase what we had from before. Okay. So say we start with 1/7, and we're trying to find an equivalent fraction. What can we do? Well, we can find that we can just multiply the numbers by any number that equals 1. So what we can do is we can multiply 7 by 2. We can multiply 2/2, okay, which we know is still 1, okay? So we'll multiply 7 by 2 and 1 by 2. As long as you multiply the top and the bottom by the same number, you will be able to find a equivalent fraction. So 2 times 1 is 2, and 7 times 2 is 14. And this makes sense because that we know if we are doubling the pieces, if we're doubling the amount of pieces that are represented in the whole, which is what the denominator tells us, then we know that we're going to have to double the amount that is taken away, which shows in the numerator, or the amount that is shaded in the numerator. So, what I'm going to have you all do now, after looking at those problems, we are going to look at some practice problems. So, these are going to be your practice problems. So, before we go ahead and I'll have you practice, we're just going to have a review. What did we learn about equivalent fractions? Okay, we learned that fractions, they are fractions that are different but have the same value. Okay, we also learned that to make an equivalent fraction, we can multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number as we did here. So 1/4, if we multiply the top by 2 and the bottom by 2, we are able to find that 2/8 would be an equivalent fraction of 1/4. Okay? We also found if the numerator and denominator share a common factor, you can divide each number by the common factor to get an equivalent fraction. So if we have 2/8, we see that the common factor here between 2 and 8 could be is 2. So we have 1 and 2 are the factors of 2. 1, 2, 4, and 8 are the factors of 8. And the two numbers that are the same, and we said we weren't going to look at 1 because it would be the same number, are 2. So if we divide each by 2, we get 1/4. So we can see that 2/8 would be a common, we see that 2/8 would be an equivalent fraction of 1/4 because we were able to divide by the common factor and find that value. Now, after we have reviewed what we have learned today, I would ask you to pause the video and go through and on a separate sheet of paper, jot down the problems, and please use diagrams to help solve your problems. This will help with your thinking and your process. And then once you are done, go ahead and hand in your answers to the teacher. And don't forget to make note of the important numbers, the important parts of each of the questions. Thank you, and we have just gone over what equivalent fractions are and how to find them.